Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will have a discussion with Right Worshipful Brother Roger Nelson, who is the Deputy of the Supreme Council for the Orient of Washington.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our usual group of hosts. I'm Matt Appel, and I'm a member of Mill Creek Lodge number 243 here in Montlake Terrace, Washington. We have Very Worshipful Brother David Colbeth from King Solomon Lodge number 60 in Auburn, Washington. Very Worshipful Brother Stephen Chung from Prince Charles number 153 in Kelowna, BC. And Brother Craig Graham from Kalmalka number 160 in Vernon, BC. And today's guest of honor is Right Worshipful Brother Roger Nelson, who I guess I'm mixing my titles, I think. But Right Worshipful Brother Roger Nelson, who is the Deputy Grand Master for the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of Washington. But today he is here in his capacity as the Deputy of the Supreme Council for the Orient of Washington, which is the essentially head honcho of the Scottish Rite in Washington. So welcome, Right Worshipful Brother Roger.
Thank you. It's nice to be.
Okay, so what title should I be using? Illustrious?
Yeah, it's Illustrious Brother Nelson.
Roger. So I apologize for already messing up. It didn't take me long. So so as we are with our usual interview process, we're just sort of what brought you to Masonry? How did you end up becoming a Mason?
I'm a third generation Mason from Tacoma. I was raised in the same lodge as my dad, and my dad was raised in the same lodge as his father. My granddad was a vaudevillian and was very much taken to the drama of Scottish Rite, as was my father. And so that was obviously something that I was attracted to. My dad was in D. Malay, and in fact, one of the photographs that hung in his office on South Tacoma Way was of him as he was Master Counselor of Tacoma, served as Mayor of Tacoma for a day, which was something that they did every year in the city of Tacoma. And I thought, wow, my dad was Mayor of Tacoma because he was a D. Malay. And so that kind of set me on my path, that I thought that if you were a D. Malay, that you got to be Mayor of Tacoma for a day. So unfortunately, that never happened when I was a D. Malay, but fortunately for the city of Tacoma, but unfortunately for me.
I can only imagine the power that would have accrued to you.
Right, yeah.
So and then you said you joined Scottish Rite mainly you were impressed by I don't want to say theatrical, but that side of it, the dramatic side of it.
Most definitely. Yeah, I became a Mason in 1985 in Destiny Lodge in Tacoma, which is now Fairweather Lodge. They merged, which was actually a very good merger. And I've seen good ones and I've seen poor ones. And I'm sure when we talk about Lou Lodges, we'll get to broach that subject. But I would many times hear my father muttering, when he was shaving behind a closed door. And I asked him who's he talking to? And he said he was rehearsing his lines for a play, a Masonic play. And he said it had a lot to do with the same things that his dad did. And my dad didn't say it, my grandfather never said it, but many years later, I heard someone describe the Scottish Rite as kind of an amalgam of a church, which is surprising because it's not a religion, and a theater company. And I thought that was kind of an interesting amalgam. But yeah, that always fascinated me. And I was in drama in high school, and had spent a few years in radio and television by the time that I had joined Masonry. And so Scottish Rite sounded like the thing I really wanted to be involved with.
So were you personal rep of like the Tacoma Valley then, or?
No, honestly, my career kind of took precedence over Masonry for a number of years, and I had relocated to Spokane, and it was just going to be for a couple of years, and that's like 27 years ago. It was only going to be for a couple of years, but I met a girl. Those things happen, and so I've been here ever since. And my father passed away in about the year 2000. And my wife had never been exposed to anything Masonic. She was raised Catholic, and we went over to the Tacoma Valley and they performed the Rose Croix service, which is ecumenical and very beautiful. And I think it took all of maybe 17 minutes. They all did it from memory. And as we were driving away, and you must forgive me, my wife actually talks like this. She said, I don't know what you guys do in those funny hats and uniforms, but that's what you got to be doing. And she meant the funeral service. And the only time that I would come over for Scottish Rite was 2 times a year to do the 15th degree in Tacoma's reunions with my dad. And so when I got back to Spokane, I connected with Spokane Scottish Rite and I said, I need to get involved with Scottish Rite again and sign me up for the funeral team. And honestly, it has been the most valuable thing that I've done in all of Masonry has been the Rose Croix funeral team. To this, between then and now, I think I've done 68 conferrals.
I did not know there was a Rose Croix funeral service in all my years. I mean, I've been since 2005 in Scottish Rite, and I've never heard of that. I'll have to look that up.
Please allow me to send you the script for it. I'm sure it's public domain. I don't think I'm going to get in a jam for sending it to you. And I truly do believe that for many people, for family and the general public, many times it's their first entree to anything Masonic, and it truly is a beautiful piece of work.
Cool, very cool. I look forward to receiving that.
Yeah.
Right, I'll have to ask a couple of my brothers here in the Valley of Vernon about it. I have one brother that does the Blue Lodge Masonic funeral service. He's one of the few guys who knows it, right?
And those two services, the Blue Lodge graveside service and the Scottish Rite service, Rose Croix service, they go very nicely hand in hand. And in fact, we made a tri-panel collateral, if you will, that described the service, and we've distributed those to a number of funeral homes so that they know that it's available if they've got someone there, a family they're working with, that they're doing a Masonic service, that this is also available, that we provided the family free of charge.
That's awesome. That's really good.
For the record, the Washington is in the Orient, of which you are the honcho, is in the southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite, but BC is part of the Canadian jurisdiction. Is that correct? Canada has its own.
Yep. Yeah. There's the Supreme Council for Canada, based in Hamilton, Ontario. I think of the two jurisdictions in the States, my understanding has always been that the Canadian one lines up much more closely with the southern jurisdiction than the northern. I don't know how it works in the States. I know there's two of them, and I think, and Roger, you're the guy to step in here, but there's quite a bit of difference between the two jurisdictions, isn't there?
There is, and I really need to preface this. David, what did Ken Schramm and Brian Johnson always used to say before their editorials on KOMO? The following musings and opinions are not necessarily the opinion of our owners and advertisers. Please know that I speak for myself, not necessarily the Grand Commander or Scottish Rite. This basically comes from my limited knowledge and experience, but yeah, I do believe that the southern jurisdiction aligns more closely with that of Canada's. So I would provide the script for the funeral service purely for research purposes, and if you wanted to use it, I would suggest that you check with your deputy or SGIG.
I'd have a feeling, it's off the top of my head here, I'd almost think that it probably exists somewhere in Canada, just for whatever reason, probably never came up in regular usage, and I would just have to think it's probably a numbers thing.
Well, it's also a nice adjunct. You know, this is the time of year in March and or April when the ceremony of remembrance and renewal is typically staged, and many times that Rose Croix conferral can also be a part of that, to remember our departed brothers in mass from the past year.
The remembrance and renewal, you mean like the Easter ceremony?
Correct.
Right. Yeah, we'll be doing that next month.
Mandatory. The Monday,
Thursday. Yeah, that is mandatory for us here. We'll be doing that next month.
Yeah, that changed in the southern jurisdiction a number of years ago, from the obligatory Maundy, Thursday to the ceremony of remembrance and renewal.
Hmm.
Roger, when you were coming up through the Blue Lodge, did you have to be, um, I guess I'm thinking a shrine. I'm sorry. I was thinking, how did you decide that, other than your theatric background and your father, how did you decide that when to join Scottish Rite? Did you do it immediately, or did you wait a little while, or how did that happen?
I drug my feet a little bit. I really worked hard on my proficiency. I did do it mouth to ear. Um, uh, you know what? It's perhaps we had this discussion before. There was a psychology professor at the University of Washington in the mid 1980s by the name of Elizabeth Loftus, and you can look up her work. But she did a study that echoic images stay in the mind 6 times longer than iconic images. And if you think about it, you could probably sing to me the ingredients of what's in a Big Mac, right? Could you not?
Sure,
Well,
sure,
beef
sure,
patties,
sure,
lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. And they haven't used that commercial in what, 25 years?
easy,
Longer
easy.
than
Oh,
that.
but could you tell me what the full page ad was that month that jingle was running on radio? No, of course you couldn't. Um, and it is the primary sense is that we hear. And so I think that is a huge connection as to why our ritual was given to us mouth to ear. And so I did go through the degrees, became proficient, as quickly as I could, but I mistakenly feared that, that it was going to be a much more daunting process going through 29 degrees, that I was going to go through that many times. And my father, unfortunately, did not allay my fears, right? Right. So I did take my time. I will share with you, I delayed for 25 years joining the shrine, because my career was somewhat, I never went to college. Yeah, I had the best career of anyone that Como was the first. I was the first person that Como ever hired without a degree. I was the youngest person they'd ever hired in their news department, and it was the best paid um, education a young man could ever have. But it really was quite demanding. It was typically 50 hours, 55 hours a week. Um, it's the kind of thing that you slept with a scanner by your bedside. But that being said, when I got into Scottish Rite, I went in full feet. I did not join the shrine for 25 years because I had a significant resentment against the shrine for cutting out the requirement that you had to become either a York Rite Mason or a Scottish Rite Mason to become a Shriner. And without showing too much of my metaphysics uh, alignment, one day in meditation, my father voice came to me and he said, you dumb Swede, you'd be a much better agent for change inside the tent than outside the tent. And that's exactly what he would have said to me. And so I joined the shrine, and after 25 years, and after 8 years became potentate, and I found it to be a wonderful recruiting ground for Masons that only became Masons to become Shriners, to get them back into Blue Lodge and to become Scottish Rite Masons. And sometimes I hear people malign Masons who become Masons only to become Shriners, only to become Scottish Rite Masons, or only to join Eastern Star or what have you. Hell, they're in the quarry, right? Isn't that what matters?
Yeah, I do the 6-step program, and I manage all the seekers that come to our lodge. And one of the brothers that came in, I was I was questioned as to why I put this man forward, and his whole reason for joining Freemasonry was so that he could become a shrine and do good work like they did for his family years before. And that was the only reason. He didn't he was straight up, I don't have time to do regular lodge. I don't have time to do anything, but I do want to give some time to the shrine and be able to give back. And I understand that I have to be a Freemason to do that, right? And so I had no problem in putting his name forward, right? And it was surprising the blowback I got for that, but I think after time went on and they saw how active he was in the shrine, and I'm not a member of the shrine yet. I'm reserving that for when I retire. And they say that he's quite the active member. So I think it's a good thing. As like you say, he's in the quarries working with everyone else.
Yeah. Say what you will, they've got the best, most recognized brand of any branch of masonry. You know, there's no question. I just like to see more shrine temples put a square and compass on their parade vehicles and their banners, etc., so that we can, build that foundation more effectively. Mhm. By
This
the way,
just in, Deputy Grand Master of Washington disapproves of the shrine.
I'm sorry?
This just in, Deputy Grand Master of Washington disapproves of the shrine.
Oh, that's not true at all.
No, I'm just kidding.
That is not true at all. No, no, no.
Oh, hang on, Deputy Grand Master. So that means we're going to be interviewing him again within the year or so.
Oh, there's no lesson learned from the second kick of a mule.
Evens
All
out
right.
the pain. Evens out the pain.
So I got a good question for you. How much do you think D. Millay prepared you for Scottish Rite?
In many ways it did. The memory work certainly helped. The hierarchy of office certainly helped. The comradeship certainly helped. My parents got divorced when I was about 12, and so I actually had the benefit of being a DMLA in 3 different cities, in Tacoma, in Pasco, and in Kennewick. So I'd like to say that I got to experience DMLA in both a rural and an urban setting. The same with Masonry, and I will tell you, Masonry in urban and rural settings is vastly different. Yeah, same with DMLA. So I think it helped. It certainly helped. But they are decidedly different experience, because when I was a child, I did childish things, and as I got older, the road narrowed, and I did less childish things.
Yeah, I really got into the DMLA degree, and when we did that, it was always awesome, and the team. I mean, we still, when we get together for other reasons, or like a stag or whatever, because we still that band of brothers still gets together a few times a year. We can sit there and start rattling off the work from our DMLA years, and the DMLA degree is I guess that played a big part in my, well, which way do I want to go? Scottish Rite, I heard there was a degree every meeting, right? And there was and they did full out plays, like, and it was like, okay, well, DMLA, that's what I enjoyed about DMLA, and so I find that very fulfilling in Scottish Rite.
So I've heard, I think this is sort of along the same lines of what you were just talking about, with the degrees, but I guess my first question is, Roger, have you seen all or experienced all 29, I guess 30 degrees?
I have. I've seen them all exemplified. I have visited Guthrie, Oklahoma, for instance.
Nice.
And I have, which is a fascinating experience. And so much so that although my home valley is Tacoma and I'm a lifetime member there, I also joined the Valley of Guthrie because I want to make sure that that beautiful Masonic edifice is preserved and maintained, and that that annual communication of degrees continues, if at all possible. And
Maybe it's because I'm Canadian. I'm not familiar with the reference to Guthrie.
Guthrie, Oklahoma, is a marvelous little town that at one time was the seat of the Oklahoma Territory, and the building there was actually the seat of the territorial government until they decided that Oklahoma City, or what is the capital of Oklahoma? I should know this. Not that many years out of high school, am I? Um,
Google it, Matt.
you can see it from Guthrie, for God's sakes. And they moved the seat almost overnight. But needless to say, the seat of the territorial government, the legislative body, actually held its meetings there in that building. Well, Scottish Rite now lives in that building, and it is, to say it's beautiful just sells it so short. The library is magnificent. The theater's magnificent, and all of the Scottish Rite members, say for instance from a Blue Lodge out in pick a city in Oklahoma, that the Scottish Rite members in that Blue Lodge will put on a degree. And so from Friday at 7 a.m. until um, late in fact, they even, I don't know how they get dispensation or do Masonic work on a Sunday. It continues through Sunday, and they'll communicate, they'll exemplify all 29 degrees in play form by 29 different degree teams, and it is quite remarkable in full regalia, in full costume, in full makeup. They have a Native American cast as well. Um, Nearly all of it from memory, and I am, to the point of pain for some brothers, um, adamant that our degrees should be done from memory, because I think the lessons are learned more viscerally when the ritualist has to memorize them. And so we are working towards staging our first ever Orient wide reunion in the Orient of Washington, May 30th and 31st in Seattle. And it is our hope that over the course of 2 years, we will exemplify all 29 degrees. We're going to exemplify 13 this year and 16 next year, and the rest we will communicate using the full motion and video from Guthrie, Oklahoma, featuring the voice and likeness of Jim Tressner. So yes, in long answer to a very short question, I have seen all 29 degrees exemplified.
Which I guess I should explain for their non-Scottish Rite Masons. There's only, I want to say, 5 mandatory degrees. I should know this being in Scottish
Terminal
Rite.
degrees. Yeah.
Terminal degrees. There we go.
4th degree, 14th degree, 18th degree, 30th degree, and 32nd degree are the mandatory.
So one could, myself for instance, not have experienced all 29 of the degrees and still be a 32nd degree Mason.
They must at least be communicated to you, and
right. Yeah, there was a brief reading of the summary, but I certainly would not say that I experienced any of those degrees. I have experienced some of them,
and it's recently become that way in our jurisdiction as well, that the 4th and the 14th are the only mandatory degrees. I mean, back when I joined in 2005, if you missed the 5th or the 7th or whatever degree along the way, you had to wait until next year until they did them over again and to carry on. And I'm the Thrice Pucin Grand Master right now, and I just had one of our guys miss the 7th degree and messaged me about coming to the next degree, and I'm thinking in my head, hang on, you don't get to progress because you missed the 7th degree. And so I thought, before I go there, I'm gonna to double check and make sure I'm still right with my illustrious Grand Secretary. And he corrected me, and he said, no, it's been in the past couple of years changed, and I don't know why, but I don't know that I agree with it either.
I do think it's important for the non-Scottish Rite viewers or listeners that we point out to them that, and I'm speaking from my own perspective, that the Scottish Rite degrees are not necessarily higher degrees, but I would posit that they are deeper degrees, and that they are more visceral lessons about morality and life's lessons and philosophy, if you will.
Right. And just so you know, Dave does this really great disclaimer at the beginning that's already pre-recorded. You don't have to keep saying that because it's all of our own opinions,
Okay.
and not those of our bodies, etc.
I want to make sure that I'm keeping myself out of a jam with Grand Commander. I'm not going to leave that up to David.
Turn it over to the legal staff and they can clarify all of this for us.
Thank you.
So I think that we're headed towards the end of our episode here. So I guess I want to thank you, illustrious Brother Roger, for coming on to our humble show. And hopefully, or would you be willing to stick around and have, I guess, shouldn't ask you this while we're recording, but
I'd be honored to stick around. Yes.
All right. Thank you, sir. So that draws to an end this episode of the Working Tools podcast. On behalf of David and Stephen and Craig and myself, thank you, illustrious sir, for coming on this evening. And for the rest of you, please, the usual end of episode spiel applies. Please check out our social media and such and leave us some comments. We're always interested in hearing what people have to say. And with that, thank you all for listening to the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.